Welcome back to the WatchGauge YouTube channel, everybody. I am super excited today. I am sharing a screen here with my new and good friend Barry Cohen of ProTek Watches. How you doing, Barry?
I'm doing great today, John. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Thanks for taking time out of your day. So, as most of you know, you may have seen on the YouTube channel or in the email list, email newsletter, um, proud authorized retailer of ProTek Watches. And I thought it'd be really great because to have Barry on, because I was inspired not only from talking to him while getting our partnership going here, but also I watched a couple of interviews that are out there. And Barry, you know, you're a perfect mix to me of what I remember getting into the industry for 20 years ago. Somebody who's in the industry, somebody's passionate about what they're doing. And you know, I think it'd be great for you to kind of to introduce you to the audience or the people who watch my videos and visit my site, and have you kind of give us a bit of background on not only yourself but what you've done in the industry, and more importantly, what you're doing with ProTek and what your plans are. So,
Uh,
so I think maybe the first question would be, tell us where you came from, man. Where did it all start for you in the watch business?
I'm happy to begin there, but you mentioned one word, passion. I'm going to come back to that later.
Please.
Um, so, if I take you all the way back, I had been in the fashion watch business at the moment when the advent of fashion watches really took off. Slightly, just slightly after Swatch, Guess, and Fossil hit the scene. I was carrying a bunch of accessories as a salesman. I'd come out of a corporate sales job before that, and picked up some fashion watches, some sterling silver watches, and that kind of threw me into watches. I mean, at the time, I was really carrying a number of accessories that included socks, ties, uh, sunglasses, watches, umbrellas, all kinds of things. And over the course of time, that got whittled down to just sunglasses and watches, which really worked well because more sunglasses sell in the spring season and more watches sell in the fall season. So
That makes sense.
consequently, my commissions were evening out over a whole year, and it seemed, okay, this is good. In fact, there's a sunglass company called Costa Del Mar out there that today is a big company, but they
Yep, right
actually,
here.
okay, well, I was their first sales manager. So when they began, I got involved with them and I started putting them into Nordstrom's and other department stores and so on. Anyway, as time went along, my passion for watches and my observation of the market space led me to move more into that direction. And if I take it all the way back, it probably begins when I was 10 years old and my parents gave me a Timex and I loved it. And then when I was 12 years old, we went on some Caribbean cruise and they bought me a duty-free, I think it was a Universal Genève chronograph on
Oh,
a, on a
very
boat.
cool.
And I fell in love with that thing. And that's probably what began my passion for watches. Um, Unfortunately, a little tale for you. In high school, we were all, a buddy of mine, a couple of buddies of mine, we all went to visit his girlfriend at some camp and stayed there for a weekend. And so we snuck into some country club and went skinny dipping at night. And the cops showed up. And so we had to all jump out, get our clothes and run. And I left my chronograph on the side of the pool and I never
Oh,
did it again. But but that's how
hey,
watches began.
that might have been worth the price of admission, though.
Well, it was. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. It was fun seeing all the girls at skinny dipping. But anyway, but anyway, so that's kind of where it all began. But coming back to more current times, uh, yeah, I had been selling. I'll give you an anecdote. Selling fashion watches into a number of different places. So I had a very minimalist fashion collection from a brand out of LA, pre-Scoggin, that was the Scoggin look, that clean, simple look, like MTM, not MTM, like
MVMT.
yes, like MVMT, that whole look. And so I went to my friend who was the Macy buyer. I said, hey, look at this. We'll give it to you for $36. You mark it 79. You got a 55% markup. At the time, Macy's West had 53 stores. And I said, what do you say we start in 10 stores, we'll co-op some ads, see what happens. And this guy was a friend of mine. He was in my social circle, and he said, yeah, let's do that. That's great. But now remember, this was Asian goods coming out of China or Hong Kong that were copied routinely. So I could do this with him, and I did. But the reality is somebody could come in right behind me and say, hey, I know I don't know you like that guy, but I got the same exact watches. I'll give them to you for 30. You got a 60% markup, and I'll pay for all the ads. Well, how long is my friendship going to sustain that business? And that was one account. And I was running around the country doing this. So, it became pretty clear that I needed one of two things if I wanted to stay in this business in order to sustain a business. One would have been a really famous designer name. I mean, let's take hyperbole. Ralph Lauren watches didn't exist back then. Let's say I had Ralph Lauren watches.
Right.
Okay. And I put them out into the market. If somebody else came along and copied it, it still wouldn't be Ralph.
Right.
So you'd have a chance to continue. And I didn't know any such people. So I said, well, I better look for something else. So I started thinking about maybe I can find a technology as a differentiator. And I happened upon this self-powered illumination system that was emanating from Switzerland, from basically a physicist firm, and started a fax relationship with the then CEO. And we went back and forth on fax for a couple months. And ultimately, it became clear that if I wanted to do something, I had to go over there and sit with him. I called up a friend of mine based out of New Jersey, because we were both repping the same things, or I'd find a brand and he'd tell him, and he'd find a brand and tell me.
Right.
Said, look, I'm going to go over to Switzerland, sit down with this fellow, and try and acquire the rights to this loom technology to put into a watch, so we'd have something as a differentiator and something that could help us sustain a business. So
now, what year was this about?
It was spring of summer of 89 when this was happening. And so November of 89, we flew over there and sat down with this gentleman for 4 days, 4 days of meetings. He was a very, very decent man. He's passed away since, but he was a really kind guy. And apparently he had taken this loom technology that they pioneered and created to the major Swiss watch brands, and none of the brands really wanted it. If you think about the Rolexes, the Breitlings, the Omegas, they sell all they make. Do they really need, to dabble into, and plus it is, quote unquote, a nuclear technology. And so, there are people that might say harmless nuclear. I can explain that later. But there are people that might say, I don't want to get into that. We got a business, we sell all we make. Who needs that? So he was being rebuffed, and here comes this, at the time I was a young guy, here comes this young guy who says, hey, I believe in what you're doing. Give me a shot.
Yeah.
And so that's how it began. And interestingly, I'll tell you a little anecdote here, because people often can't believe it. During the first 3 days, he kept saying to us, well, what kind of money do you boys have? And we said, we don't have any money.
Nothing.
But we have heart, and we're going to work our tail off to make this happen. And here's what we can bring to the table. We were already doing business with most of the better mail order catalogs in America. Remember, that was the heyday of mail order back then. And so we were in LL Bean, Brookstone, Hammacher, Eddie Bauer, Orvis, Sharper Image. We're in all these.
Yeah.
And so I said, here's what we can do. We can put the watch into these catalogs, show the day, show the night, so the story is being told, and then the copy will describe it all. And that could be our ad budget, where we don't have money. And he said, okay. On the 4th day, he says, you boys are as poor as church mice. I said, well, but we got heart. And he turns around, he gets his checkbook, and he starts to write me a personal check to my name for $80,000.
Wow.
1989. Now that's that's a lot more than it would be today.
Yeah.
And he says, here's what we're going to do. Every time you sell a watch, you give us $1 back until we reach 40,000. So we are basically co-opting this 80,000 with you, but we're fronting the money. Now, bear in mind, we had no contract. I'd only just met him. a handshake. And he writes me a personal check for $80,000. I mean, that just would never be done today.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, I could have said, "Oh, great, I'm going to the Caribbean for 3 years." But obviously that wasn't our goal. We're trying to build a business, and not only that, it would be unethical, but we're trying to build a business. And as we left, I said to my partner, his name is Richard Timbo, by the way, and he had come from Porsche Design Sunglasses as sales manager. But anyway, I just said, "Rich, you realize this guy just put us in business. When someone does good for you, you got to do better for them."
Sure.
So he's expecting $1 a watch. We're going to pay him $1.50 and show him our character. And that's how it all began, really. And we started with a not a very attractive watch, because we inherited something they had made as a sample to show around before we started developing our own watches. And we also started using their brand name before we applied our own brand name, which was 2 years later. And the reasoning there was, well, if we build this thing and we're using their brand name, we're really building them, we're not building us. So we need our own brand name so we can build what we're working on. And so that's really how it all began. And then, I mentioned all those different catalog that we were working with on other products. And we, of course, went to all of them. And, at the time, there were really only 2 watch companies using this technology, and they were primarily supplying to military, but not really the consumer arena with any vigor. So we, I guess the feather in our cap was we took that LumTech and we brought it to the consumer arena. The reasoning being, hey, if this is logical, if this is an enabling technology, if this allows you to see time at a glance, no matter what the light level, including complete darkness, hey, we live around a 24-hour clock. Not everybody's up with daylight.
Right.
There are night shifts, or this and that, there's law enforcement and so on. And we said, hey, this is an enabling technology. We think it can sustain, and I think the proof's in the pudding. It has sustained. And that's kind of how the whole thing began. But I would really attribute the meteoric rise of my former brand, which was Luminox, of course, to 2 accounts, and that would be Sharper Image and Cabela's.
Yeah.
Because at the time, both of them were putting out 72 million catalogs a year.
Wow.
And we started to appear in every catalog. So you add it up, that's 144 million catalogs that we're being seen in for the American public to see what we have. We weren't thinking global, just sell America. And for about 4 or 5 years that went on. And I would say that's how Luminox really got cemented into its place. And Cabela's was probably the leader in that first responder type community. Yeah. Hunting, fishing, law enforcement, SWAT teams, this type of thing. And that's how the business began.
Yeah, that's wild. That is wild. And so when did Luminox actually first hit the market? Was it 96?
April of 90 is when we first shipped watches. And I'd say 2 years later is when they were labeled Luminox.
92. And then, so when did you depart Luminox?
Well, I'll get to that, but I want to tell you another interesting thing that happened. In 1993, the first trade shows we did were outdoor retailer shows. In 1993, a gentleman happens upon our booth, and it was a research and development officer from the Navy SEALs. And he said to us, hey, I've been looking all over for you. If you make a watch for us, a dive watch, water, because we didn't really have a water watch yet, we'd buy it. Not that many. There weren't that many SEALs. There still aren't that many SEALs.
Right.
There's a lot more today than there were then. But and so he said, we'll buy some from you, and then you can go tell the world you sold us. And maybe that credibility will help you grow your business. And indeed it did. I'll give Sharper Image, for example, when they first started running our product, they just called it the Navy SEAL watch. Right. And they didn't mention, and Hammacher Schlemmer, the Navy SEAL, but nobody mentioned our brand name. And so we had to begin. I said, hey, this isn't building us. This is building a story. Sure. So we need to insist that if they run our product, the name Luminox has to be there, and they can call it the Navy SEAL series.
Of course, yeah.
So that's how it began. So anyway, so I was with my first partner, and I worked till 16 years we worked together. Now his kids were older than mine, so they had gone through school, and he had arrived at the decision, I don't want to do this now. I want to travel the world. I want to do other stuff. So he wanted to exit. Sorry about that. He wanted
Okay.
to exit, and I started looking for potential partners that could buy him out. And in retrospect, it's always 2020. The reality is I should have bought him out, but I didn't. And I brought in other guys to buy him out, and they were my partners for the next 10 years. And in 2016, I decided to exit the business at the end of the year. And that was for philosophical reasons. The new partners and I we didn't mesh that well. We didn't agree on quite a few things, and it just was starting to become an uncomfortable place to be. And I just thought, maybe it's time to move on. And so that's what I did. It wasn't an easy decision because
Sure.
the brand was like a kid. I have a son, I have a daughter, I had a watch.
Yeah.
And
I mean, starting WatchGauge, and running WatchGauge for the past 5.5 years, I can totally understand that. And you and I were talking before we hit record here, and I told you at one point, I had people interested in buying WatchGauge, and my biggest hurdle was nothing more than, well, it's mine. Like I started it, I love it, I enjoy my day to day, and I could certainly see how you felt, and how hard it must have been to finally walk away, especially after that length of time. And I couldn't even guess how many watches you had made over those 20 some odd years.
millions by then.
Yeah. Yeah.
But and we did. Listen, I'm not going to say that there weren't positives to the partnership.
Sure.
Where we accessed various parts of the world that I wasn't touching. I mean, yeah, there were a lot of positives.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean anything disparagingly against.
No, not at all. And I have no ill will. That's negative energy. That doesn't help you at all.
Nope, I get it.
It just, all that does is drag you down. I don't want to go there.
100%.
So what I had a separate watch company called Time Concepts that I had started because at the many trade shows, and at the time we were doing, 15 trade shows a year or something. I don't remember the exact number, but at these trade shows, people would say, hey, watches, would you make one for my brand? Would you make one for our stores? Would you make, with their branding? And I realized, well, this is a different thing. I guess I need a platform from which to do this. And so that was the advent of Time Concepts, which is aptly named. It's concepts and watches. And we started making watches at either design development or actually all the way through production for, I don't know, dozens of companies. A long list. I mean, a long list. Cabela, Orvis, NBC, Polaroid, BMW. Oh my gosh, I can't even remember some of them. McLean Fogg, Special Olympics, like 24 companies.
That's cool.
And Bauer, 511. We did full design development. I'm just a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so that's what that platform was. But I started to realize that this platform is not really great for us because we still have to contract with factories. They need their margins. We need our margins. And more importantly, we don't control the reorder. It's up to those people.
Right.
So at that point, the thinking came about, hey, we need to put our own brand onto this platform. So it's something we can control. And that was the advent of our vintage brand called SZANTO.
Yep.
And that came about because a guy that had some of my Luminox, actually a celebrity chef on television, Tyler Florence, who lives in the area, he had called me up and said, you got to see this watch I got. And I went to meet him for coffee, and he pulled out of his pocket an old 1930s Gruen military watch and said, isn't that cool?
Yeah.
Now, meanwhile, he was wearing an IWC Top Gun, but this comes out of his pocket. And I said, yeah, it's really cool, but who's going to wear that? The watch head was smaller than a quarter. And at the time, watches were big.
Right.
And he said, I know that, but my point is that there's a void in the market, and you should go create some vintage designs for today using today's quartz technologies or even today's autos, and just conjure up the flavor of yesteryear with something pretty dependable for today. So that's how SZANTO began, as a little niche vintage inspired design brand. But now we had something on the platform. And then over time, at one point, for example, the Hawaiian Lifeguard organization came to me and said, hey, we'd like you to make our watches.
Yeah. I love these. I love the Hawaiian Lifeguard one.
It's a great watch. It's for the price. It's an outstanding watch. I'll tell you a story on that. I know we're here to talk about ProTek, but I'll tell
No,
you
it's
that.
cool. It's cool. This is what I wanted to get from you.
So we created that watch, and I had a couple of what I would call Lifeguard legends, Archie Kalapa and Brian Keolana, who helped me conceive what the design would be and brought that to market. And when I say, let me tell you a little something briefly. These Hawaiian Lifeguards, I mean, if you're picturing, like, I grew up in a little bedroom community of New York. My family belonged to a country club, and I go to the country club in the summer, and maybe I was 11, and on the lifeguard stand was a 19-year-old, and I'd, oh, that's a big mature guy and all this, or woman. And these are not country club lifeguards. These are ocean rescue experts.
Right.
And it's part of the reason is, think about the waters of Hawaii. Why do they have so many big wave surf contests? I mean, it's a place where you can find waves in excess of 50 feet at certain times of the year in certain places. And these lifeguards are there to save lives. And and a lot of people die in that surf. And the protocols that they created for ocean lifeguarding is today what's used all over the world. So
yeah. If I'm not mistaken, I think I either saw something on either YouTube or I read something that they were the first group to actually start using jet skis for
that's correct. It was this fellow Brian that I mentioned who reasoned that if we're using a jet ski now to pull people onto waves they can't to surf that they can't swim onto. Yeah. They're just too big. Then why don't we use the jet ski to expedite life saving? And then he invented the tow sled that goes behind it, so that you can pull somebody up onto the sled and get them the heck out of danger. Again, this blew my mind. They are so good that they regularly train U.S. Special Forces, including Navy SEALs, on expediting ocean rescue. I was just at the SHOT Show in January, and a Navy SEAL from Virginia popped in. We start talking, and I started telling him that story because I know that I used to send my guys there. Yeah. So it's real. I mean, and so we wanted to create a really solid product that was right for them. And I got lucky. No brilliance of my own. I've been working with 5 or 6 factories in Asia, and I just happened upon one where the owner of this factory was obsessed with cleanliness, with quality. With the whole factory is a dust-free temperature and humidity controlled clean room. Wow. Even the parts. I'd never seen this. And the net result is that we've had a defect rate on that brand that's always below 1% and often below 0.5%, which is incredible. Your target for quartz should be about 2. Yeah. And so I just said, you know what? I'm shifting all whatever I make in Asia, I'm moving over to you. Yeah. And since then, we've had great results. We never hear about returns. Yeah. While I was running SZANTO and Hawaiian Lifeguard, and then as my non-compete came to an end, I started, and I really wasn't planning it, honestly, but I just started thinking about that I missed the category that I helped to create. Yeah. And I said, I'm not a young kid anymore, but maybe one last shot to try and do a brand the way I believe it should be done, the way I think it's best made, without partners that also have valid opinions. Their opinions count. Sure. But to do it the way I would want the watch made for me. Yeah. And so I started thinking about it, and I said, you know what, why not do that? And so now we get to ProTek. Sorry about the first 10 minutes.
No, listen, to me, this is gold. I love this stuff.
All right. So so I just started coming up with, okay, what's this brand going to be? And, what are its colors? What are its values? What do we want to do here? And, we started the brand with 3 series. One would be a carbon composite case dive watch. Very handsome on you, by the way.
Thank you.
One would be, there's another one. Yep. One would be a steel dive watch, and one would be a titanium field watch. So we had covered a couple of different types of customer profiles and types of watches. And that's what we launched with. Now, and we launched in the like end of Q1 or beginning somewhere in Q2 of 2022. And that's really it. That's how it began. Now, while at Luminox, we had this program with an affiliation and tied to Navy SEALs. And one of my really good friends who had worked with me at Luminox for 16 years, great guy, still a great friend. Speak to him every week. We always talk basketball. Anyway, he was a Marine, once a Marine, always a Marine.
Yeah.
And he was friendly with a guy that came into Luminox to talk to us about running a Marines program. And we thought seriously about it long and hard, and nothing but respect there. But the thinking at the moment is it might dilute the Navy message. And so we politely passed. Now, I knew the guy who had come, and he's the one who established the Marines licensing programs. He hired the people, he put the people in place, and so on. And so my old buddy Max had continued a relationship with him, and they were in conversation. And I guess Max had mentioned some of what we were doing. And one day I get a call, and this fellow was on the line, and he says, "Hey, Barry, it's Mike. Yeah, my son's Mike. I know a lot of Mikes."
Right. Yeah.
And I said, "Oh, Mike," and so they, tells me, "Oh yeah, how you doing?" And so we start talking, and I guess the word, I think he said, the word's on the street that you're going back into tactical tritium tactical type watches. I said, "Yeah, I am." He goes, and here, this was a very nice comment. I was extremely flattered. He said, "If you're doing it, we want it."
Yeah.
And I said, "Whoa, thank you. That's incredibly kind." And
Yeah.
so he said, "Hang tight, I'll come back to you." And I guess he kind of started the conversations with the office, and one thing led to another. And over the course of a month or so, we put a program together where we now make also one, there are several affiliated brands with the Marines, but we make an official watch of the United States Marines.
Yeah.
And that's what this is, by the way.
Yep. Yep.
And
I think that's the
that logo says it all right there.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
On the embossed, stamped, screw-in case back. We'll talk about that separately.
That's very embossed. That's a nice, that stands on its own, that thing. You can wear
It
that
really
watch
does.
upside down.
It really does. I could tell you a separate anecdote there about.
Sure.
Okay, so this fellow, this very same guy, he's been in various police departments. He's been in personal security, corporate security, and today he works as security for a guy named Devin Booker, whose name you might know, who scored 47 last night, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, all-star two-guard for Phoenix.
Yeah.
And so I said, I'd love to give him a watch.
Sure.
I'd like to gift him one.
Yeah.
If you come to play the Golden State Warriors, because I'm here in the Warrior town.
Yep. There you go.
So if you come to visit, when they come to town, I've got season tickets since 1987. I'm a hoop junkie, and I said I'd love to meet him if you could arrange that. So he arranges it. I go to his hotel. I'm invited up to the room suite to talk to him. He's getting physical training on his legs from a trainer and so on. We start talking, and I had brought the watch you're wearing.
Okay.
Because Phoenix is orange.
Yeah.
So I had brought that for him as a gift. I brought him some caps. I'll show you the caps.
Yeah.
A bunch of caps, t-shirts, and so on. And I showed that one to him.
Yeah.
Now, I also showed him the full Marines collection because I was there talking to him. And I said, I brought this for you because I was certain you'd want orange because of Phoenix.
Yeah.
And he looks at it, he goes, I really like that one, Barry. But he looked at the case back, the very thing you just talked about of the Marine one. He looked at that case back and he said, "Would you mind if I took that one?" I said, "No, take whatever you want." He goes, "I love that." So that's a little case back anecdote that people do like that case back.
That's cool. I have to tell you, and I'm sure you have dozens of stories like that. I'll never forget one time. I'm trying to remember how it even started. I think it was couple of comments in some of my YouTube videos. And when I replied back to the guy who was asking some questions, turned out he was the lead guitarist for a very big country band that I'm a big fan of. And next thing you know, 6 months later, I'm hanging out in the tour bus at a concert here on Long Island with the whole band because this guy reached out about watches. And that's we should just sit down one day and talk about just different wild stories that where the watch industry will take you if it lets you, right? Like I had a phone call with the drummer for Kiss, not Peter Criss, Eric Singer. Eric Singer, out of the blue one day, his manager calls me because we sell SZANTO Watches, which is the official Jaws watch, or the reproduction of the Jaws watch. And Eric Singer, his manager calls and he said, "Hey, can you mind speaking with Eric Singer?" I was on the phone with the guy for an hour and a half. Great dude, what a nice guy.
People are people, even if they're
That's it.
celebrities.
Most of them are humans. Let's cover some key points about
just
ProTek.
just the basics. The basics are this.
For sure.
First of all, the brand name has meaning.
That I love. I love this.
So, ProTek. The center of our bullseye for the target customer we're going after would be called first responders of all types: mountain rescue, law enforcement, tactical, military, EMT, anything in that realm.
Yep.
Where they do seem to appreciate the self-powered loom that is part of this. It's the most important part of this watch program. So we define them as the pros. And then tech stands for the illumination technology.
Right.
And then a bit of a play on words. If you think about it, all those people are the people that protect us.
I love that.
So that's kind of how the whole name came to mean something. Now, we're going to be compared to the other tritium watches out there. It's inevitable.
Sure.
And so, and really, I'm a big believer that a rising tide rises all boats.
I agree.
So if other tritium brands do well, that's wonderful because it creates more awareness for the category, and some of that benefit will, come to us. And we're not, to be clear, we're not trying to take one bit of business from anybody else.
Right.
Our goal, in fact, I wish everybody else, including my former brand, nothing but the best. But
Sure.
Our goal is to make the pie a little bigger and just have our little slice on the side. That's it. It's modest. We're not looking for global domination or any of this nonsense. We just want to make, really, it's about coming back to the category I love, making what I believe is an excellent watch, and then supplying that watch to people that can appreciate it. I saw some comments on some other interview I was on, and that's what I responded to. Look, I'm not trying to take anything from anyone else. We don't.
Of course not.
Wish everybody the best. We just want a little tiny slice, and I just want to make the kind of watches I've always loved.
Yeah.
And deliver them to people that can appreciate it. That's it.
I agree a million percent. I mean, just from my standpoint, I've got an online watch store. If my sales double next year and I heard those 3 other stores quadrupled, I'm happy for them. We sell watches, right? We're not, thank goodness in my case, we're not responsible for saving lives or people's finances or their children. So, for me, this isn't a competitive business to me. It is let's all do it,
Right.
Let's all get together in 2 years and high five each other with the fact that we're rocking and rolling and making some money and making people happy along the way.
Yep, that's kind of where I'm coming from. So that's what we're doing. And then, but I will tell you this, these are the dynamics and the reality of trying to launch a new brand. I mean, it's a new brand that it's not easy.
Yeah.
And so we just, I told you that I made the watch the way I wanted to make it, as if it was for me. And so honestly, we've short margined this whole thing because I put a lot more quality features into our entry level than I ever have before.
Right.
And so normal watch margins, this watch would be well into the 5s, but we cut it into the 4s, hundreds, obviously, into the 400s, so we can offer a little more value for the components that we're using. For example, let's take the carbon composite case. So we're using 30% carbon.
Okay.
And the comparative in a comparative brand might be 10% carbon.
Oh, wow.
For entry level carbon. This is our entry level, somebody else's entry level, without mentioning any names.
Of course.
So, and then where they might be using a mineral crystal at that level, we're using a sapphire crystal with anti-reflective coating. They might be using a polyurethane strap. We're using genuine rubber, and in the rubber, we mold a steel tube through it that the spring pin goes through.
Smart.
They'd be 200 meters. We are 300 meters with every single watch tested to the full depth rating in both air and water, every watch in water.
Right.
So that's not often done. It's, if you do water, it's batch testing. I want to know these things are watertight.
Right.
Again, we're 300 meters. They've got a push crown with a couple O-rings. We're using a screw crown with 5 O-rings.
Yeah.
They have a plate back with set screws. We're using an embossed screw-in case back. You know, so just at the entry level, we're trying to put more into it. Do the other brands have the same kind of components as us? Yes, but they're more pricey than us.
Sure.
And that's what I was saying. We brought more quality in at a better price.
Right.
That's kind of how it's gone. Now, I got to tell you that we're also in our the comments I'm reading, people are flipping out over our field watch.
I love it. I love the loom. I love the different colors, and I'll superimpose some of that on top of this video for everybody to see. That is sharp.
I think that loom is mesmerizing. We're using the T100 tritium tubes, which are bigger, longer indices. Yep. We use 3 colors of glow, but it's medical grade titanium. The weight of the watch is only 48 grams. You honestly don't, I'm wearing it now. You don't even know it's on your wrist. I mean, it's feather light.
Well, I have to be honest. I feel that way about the 1000 series. I mean, with the carbon composite, it is so super comfortable, and I think the size was perfect too. You know, a lot of these tactical watches out there, they're enormous, and you know, to me, if I were an actual tactical guy, I don't want something that's going to be oversized and getting in the way. It should be
that's part of what we've seen over the last decade or so in terms of watch sizing.
Sure.
You know, you go back long enough, what men's watches were 36, 37, 38 millimeters. And then we went into that trend where everything went massive. And certainly the watches I used to make at 44, 45, 47 were a lot bigger.
Yep.
And as we came with this brand, I said, you know, the whole trend has gone down. Right. I remember seeing an Oris maybe 9 years ago at 36 millimeters for men. And I thought, whoa, that's radical, but I hope it's a harbinger of what's to come and we get back to some sense of normalcy.
I believe so, yeah.
So but by the same token, that customer expects a little bit of heft. So I didn't want to go below 42 on the carbon.
Yeah.
It was 42. And when I went to the SHOT Show, which is, you know, a lot of that kind of customers, I was waiting for someone to say something negative, you know, oh, that's too small or something like that. And especially with this 40 millimeter field watch going down to 40.
Yeah.
And over 4 days, not one person said something negative. In fact, many said, oh, this is a lot more wearable. So I think we did the right thing. I hope we did. It fits better for most guys. And we're mostly a guy brand, although a woman can wear the 40 millimeter field. And so that, you know, that's kind of the story there. And then the other thing I would tell you is on our steel dive series, which is 200 meters. And by the way, you got to feel the action on our bezels. Our bezels are as tight as you can imagine.
There's no play.
No play. And they line up dead center. And I mean, I'm really proud of that. And so the carbon's got a 60 click bezel, but the steel's got a 120 click. And the sound, the action is perfect. But, you know, you or your customers be the judge. And on that watch, I call that a desk diver.
Yeah.
What do I mean by that? All right. Well, yeah, and picture a Tag Heuer dive watch or something like that. A guy can wear it to the office. He can wear it with a suit. He can wear it with sportswear. He can wear it with swimsuits. He can wear it whatever he wants. But a lot of it's going to be like go to work kind of watch.
Right.
And so you're maybe at a desk. It's definitely suitable for diving.
Sure.
But it's probably more of a lifestyle watch that you just wear for your lifestyle. And so on that, I decided to use waterproof leather.
Okay.
So it is a leather strap. It's Italian leather, but it's treated to be used in water. So now, and same thing on the field watch. We use waterproof, same leather.
Yeah.
So there, if you take standard leather, it starts a little stiff, you break it in, wraps to your wrist eventually, but if you get it wet, it gets brittle.
Yeah.
And it's usually going to crack right around where the buckle is
Yep.
first.
Yep.
And so what's wonderful about this leather is it starts soft, it gets softer. Put your hand in water, it'll mold to your wrist and it won't crack.
Yeah.
So we opted for the waterproof leather. Now we've had some people say, yeah, but it's a dive watch, I want rubber. Okay, you can take our rubber strap from the watch you're wearing, no
Right.
problem.
Yeah.
And but that's anyway, that's the story on the 3 series. And so now there's 4 series because you got our basic carbon composite,
Right.
you got our US Marines carbon composite,
Yep.
you got our steel dive watch that I just defined as a desk diver, and you got our titanium feel. So you got 3 materials, 4 series, the entire collection in the 400s. Nothing. Well, there's 2 plated pieces that go a hair over 500, but
Right. Right.
but that's it.
Well, I have to tell you, so, I obviously was thrilled when our good friend Gary put us in touch. Gary from IW Magazine put you and I in touch. And naturally, I think before we spoke, I did my own kind of research online, looked at the brand, looked at, various things, read some articles, and then I saw your interview, one of the interviews that you did at one of the SHOT shows about the brand. And a lot of what we discussed today, we got snippets of that in that video, but myself, like, when I'm not here at my desk working and doing stuff for WatchGauge, I love being outdoors. Every Friday for 6 years, I go shooting every Friday for 1 hour during lunch. Just go to the range, whether it's an outdoor or indoor, because to me, that is my peaceful time. I love to fish. I love to be on the boat and at the beach. And to me, I love the lifestyle of the brand. I also am extremely enthusiastic about our first responders. One of my favorite shows is SEAL Team. I'm just a big fan of what those folks do, and we had to work together. And I've told you a few times, I am in love with this watch. I'm in love with this brand. I
You're
really
very
am.
kind. You're
No, it's
extremely
true.
kind, John. I appreciate that.
It's
Um,
it's my passion is watches, but to take that and encompass it with other things I love, it just makes it even better.
so you touched on first responder. Let me mention this, that one of those interviews that you're referencing um, was for a gentleman that owns 2 television networks. And so he and I kind of got into discussion about what we're making. And the net result is that he has told us that he and his group have now made ProTek the official watch of American Outdoor Television Network.
All right, very cool.
So there will be television commercials on their shows,
Mhm.
which has a maximum potential audience of 48 million a week. Although the actual, that's how many people it can feed. And I think about 1.5 million a week watch it. And they've also started the law enforcement network with First Responder TV. And he said, we're also making you the official watch of that. So we're going to get a little bit of a television exposure when the power of TV is wonderful.
Sure.
And it's great to be affiliated with a group like that appreciates what we're making and whose TV shows appeal to the audience that is part of that center of our bullseye. Now, remember, a target has a bullseye center, but there's the whole rest of the target.
Sure.
And so our goal is to, sell people even outside of that, obviously,
Right.
and just become kind of a lifestyle watch for the outdoor enthusiast, an active consumer. And then with that one little benefit of being able to see time at a glance, no matter what the light level, including complete darkness, for 25 straight years. That's our benefit. I mean, the self-powered loom it's an enabling technology.
Sure.
Look, the other watches at Hawaiian, Lifeguard, SZANTO, the other watches I make, they use the standard that would be Super Luminova today. And there's nothing wrong with it.
It's great stuff too.
It's great. This is just, if I'm to be really honest, just superior. And that's why we put it into this brand, because that consumer appreciates it.
Yep, I agree. I completely agree. Well, as I said, I'm really super stoked. I'm super excited to be working with you and working with the brand. And I haven't taken this off my wrist since I got it. I mean that I really haven't. Um, have a couple of buddies that are all in law enforcement, and I showed it to them, and you and I spoke. We're thinking about doing one for our local PD here, for those guys. And to me, I'm just excited. You know, when you do something for long enough, you tend to get a little bit numb to getting excited about things. And don't get me wrong, I get excited about some of the Zodiacs that come out and things like that. But as an overall brand, I'm super glad to be doing this with you. And yeah, we've talked about a lot of other things, possibilities and future stuff. So I genuinely appreciate it. I appreciate you taking the time to chat with us today. And
You mentioned your local police force, and certainly we'd
yes,
love it if you put that together. We just took our first order from a police force. The Oakland Police Department just placed an order with their branding on it.
awesome.
We have watches designed and developed for 8 to 10 other police departments already, and they're pulling their orders together, including San Francisco PD, Houston PD, and National Mountain Rescue. I mean, it's just a lot of groups that we ended up in dialogue with and said, hey, we want our
Sure.
own version. And so we're making them, and we're proud of that.
Yeah, I mean, for the fact of the matter is, right? Like, if I were, a law enforcement officer, or if I was in a military unit or belonged to a particular fire department, and I had heard about these watches and that's what you do, I would be super excited to be able to wear, we all know that first responders are super proud of the units they belong to. And I just watched the NYPD versus the FDNY ice hockey game. One of the best hockey games I've ever seen in my life. And, these guys are so proud of who they are and what they do that, anybody would be thrilled to have a watch with their branding on it. So if anybody watching this, you want to do a special watch for your department, your unit, or whatever you belong to, you can certainly reach out to Barry at ProTek, or you can reach out to me, John at WatchGauge.com. Yeah, so final thoughts, anything you want to say before we wrap it?
Well, first of all, the most important thing is to thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
That was fun.
Thank you for, I guess I'll use the phrase, spreading the gospel, letting people know that we exist. And just, as I said, just trying to make quality timepieces for people that can appreciate them, and not trying to conquer the world, just trying to put watches onto wrists of people that really love what we do. And that's really it. And, I'll mention one last thing, just if I may.
Please.
I don't care what product it is. It could be anything. It could be shoes. It could be suits. In the women's world, it could be handbags. Again, shoes. Again, it could be whatever the product. In the end, the consumer looks at the product, and does it pull them or does it not?
100%.
If it's appealing, it might go to the next step where they inquire more and they might want to get one. To that end, all design work on everything we've done is with my old buddy from Switzerland. I've known 30 years or more. Yeah, more. He did work with me on all of Luminox for 25 years or 23 years or whatever it was. Until I left, when he was unceremoniously pushed aside for somebody else. That's okay. People are entitled to what they want to do. But when I told him, I'm going to take one more shot at this. Are you interested in being involved? He goes, you're darn right I am. Let's do this. And he's primarily retired.
Yeah.
But he's doing it anyway. And I consider him a really, really great watch. I mean, he designed a couple of the top selling Tag Heuers of all time, some Gucci pieces. He was with a major watch concern, a maker that, in fact, before Tag Heuer had their own factories, made most Tag Heuers, made most Gucci's, so he's got a long history, and we're good buddies over the years. We see eye to eye, and so I think he's brilliant at what he does. And we designed this brand with certain influences. None of them were Luminox, just as a matter of mention.
Right.
They were not what we wanted to follow.
Sure.
Not that there's anything wrong with them. We just want to go a different direction.
Something different, right?
So we looked at brands like Tag, brands like there was one particular Hublot that we liked for a reason that I'll explain in a second. Omega, and then as we moved into the field side of things, it became more Hamilton and Longines and things like
Right.
that. And then we never copied. That's not the right way to be.
No, but you draw inspiration.
Just be influenced, get inspiration. Yeah. And so I mean, as an example, our Steel Diver, our Series 2000, the crux of that came from the very watch he designed for Tag Heuer 20 some odd years ago, right? Called their 2000 series. Right. Of course, it's different. We changed it, we tweaked it, modified it, made it beefier, and so on. But that was the inspiration from which we began. But on our carbons, we're doing something, and it's hard to see on an all black or charcoal gray watch. If I did this in steel, you'd see it in a second. We created what we're calling a new design language called facets. So the case has lots of cuts, angles all over the place. Even the strap has it.
Right.
And it's just, you don't see it when it's all black unless you really look closely.
Yeah.
But that whole feeling was for us a new direction for what I've seen in this style of watches. And at first, when he presented it to me, I was shocked. I don't know about that.
Yeah.
And as I had the drawings out for weeks, and as I kept walking past him on my desk, I kept saying, you know, that thing is growing on me. Yeah. And so that's the direction we went. So again, nothing against Luminox, they got their look, but we wanted to do something really in a different direction. And I just wanted to mention one last part, which was the designer, because he's just a terrific guy and terrific, just incredibly capable. And you know, coming back to that comment I made, it's the look of a product that's going to either appeal or not. And thus far, we're new, but thus far, we're hearing, I really love the look of these watches. So hopefully your audience will feel similarly and join us and appreciate and like the timepiece that will be on their wrist if they pick up a ProTek.
Yeah, I'm confident. John, I'm certainly confident they are. So
I really appreciate your time today. And if you ever want to hop back on for any specifics on individual models or whatever, just let me know. And
yeah, no, listen, I you know, I think everybody's going to love what we chatted about, you know, and who knows, maybe in 2 or 3 weeks we chat. I'm sure we'll chat many times before that, but you say, hey, let's get on Zoom for a chat and talk about XYZ. You know, for me, I just like bringing the, you know, interesting content to the channel, and in turn, hopefully sell some watches along the way.
Appreciate all your help, John, very much.
Same, Barry. And you're going to let me know about that SHOT Show. You're taking me out there with you this year.
Anytime, buddy.
I'm going to work the booth with you, buddy.
All right, that's okay.
Perfect.
We'll gladly have you.
All right, awesome. So wrap it up real quick for the channel. If you guys haven't subscribed, and you know, thanks for taking the time to check out this video, and we'll get back at you soon. All righty. Okay.